Today we're going to create this bright, colorful, fun art journal page. It's part of the Break the Blank Page series. What comes next? Hi, I'm Creative Katie, Karen Burchill. Let's get started. This page was broken by the technique of smooshing. If you want to see this, how we did this, go to the Break the Blank Page 10 New Ways video. I'll put it in the iCard in the top right-hand corner. So I love the colors that I smooshed on here. I used quinacridone magenta and yellow, and it made some of this orange color. Now, smooshing leaves a lot of white space, and I love that because I'm a little white space challenged. Now I'm adding to this. As much as I love the background, I know that's not the finished background. So I have to add some layers, I have to add some pattern. These are die cuts that I cut with my silhouette. Actually, this was a stencil that I had made just on paper for a class that I taught, and I had excess, and so I'm just going to use them as die cuts. This is going to add texture to the page, add a little bit more white, as well as the scallop pattern. I'm gluing this down with some TCW gel medium. When I'm starting this page, I don't know where it's going to end up. I don't have a focal image in mind. I don't even have an idea of what I'm going to do next. And that's okay. Just start. Recap of all the steps will be at the end of the video using my prompted process cards. I knew I loved the colors that were in here. And so we're on the one side of the color wheel. I want to add some contrast. So I'm going to use some turquoise, and that's really going to pop. Things that are across from the color, across each other on the color wheel, work really well when it's dry. You don't want to mix them when they're wet because that can make mud. This is the retroburst stencil. Love how this turquoise is popping on this page, as well as adding that pattern. I so love this color combination. I wrote it down in my color scheme booklet because I will use these colors on purpose for another page because I really like how they work together. This is either tiny dots or Swiss dots. I use both of them. They're both from TCW. I'm using quinacridone magenta here. The names of these stencils and links to them will be in the description box below, and there's also coupon codes, so check it out. I try putting that motif from the middle of the mermaid on there, and I didn't like it, so I just wipe it off. Sometimes things don't work, but because everything is acrylic underneath, you can get away with trying something and wiping it off. I wanted to add a little bit more contrast, so I'm using black. This one's Swiss dot. The first dot one was tiny dots. Now this black just brightens those bright colors. Contrast is always a good thing to add to your page. I wanted to add a little bit more of the retroburst, and there's nothing saying that you can't come back and add more. Put some down, come back, add as you go. And every step you take, it gets you closer to where you want it to go. And at some point, the page always lets you know what comes next. I'm edging the page with my makeup sponge that I have black acrylic paint on. This just frames the page, makes those colors pop. I love this background so much. And then I spent some time going through focal images, going through napkins, going through stencils, seeing what might work with this. And I found this owl napkin. Now I think this is one that somebody was actually using, and I just took one and put it in my purse. And I love the owls, and it occurs to me these owls are exactly the same colors that I have in the background. And then I'm going to try to use that a mandala stencil, I'm not sure which one at this point, to have the owls sitting on. Now, because the background is very busy, I'm going to glue these owls down using my fluid matte medium onto, this is just copy paper, and that's going to keep the colors bright on this owl. And when I glue it on the page, I won't see what's behind it because I don't want those markings on the owl. And the rest of the napkin I can save for another page. So once that's dry, I'm going to cut right around the owl. That circle, I had water cut this actually months ago when I thought I was going to use these owls and then ended up not. So they've been sitting waiting for the right page. So I'm just cutting this out, and now that it's mounted on the copy paper, it's more stable. Here I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave that oval around it or cut it out, and I decided that I liked it cut out better. I also decided that I wanted the reverse owl. Now all the owls on that napkin were identical. And I wanted one with, winking on the left eye and one winking on the right eye. So what I did is I cut it out and I glued it upside down. It becomes a little bit faded, but not so that you would really notice if someone didn't tell you. So that's a trick to remember if you want to reverse a napkin. You always can. So this mandala stencil is called Stained Glass, and I'm going to use it to have the owl sitting on. And I'm going to stencil through this stencil with black acrylic paint on a makeup sponge. I'm putting a little paint on at a time, trying to be careful because I don't want it to creep under the stencil. So I think that'll be a nice perch for the owls. I grabbed my fine line applicator bottle. This has white acrylic paint that has been thinned. And I'm going to do some doodling on that mandala. I'm going to add my own flavor to what was. And I start in the inside and I move out so that I don't get my hand in the wet paint. You can do as little or as much doodling as you want. Now remember, this is all sped up and it's not exactly perfect. My hands are shaking a little bit. The lines aren't perfect. I'm okay with that. And I decide I'm going to put hearts in the middle of these circles. And the reason for this is the sentiment that I chose from my sentiment pack number 1 was owl you need is love. And I thought I'm just going to put that little bit of a heart motif in it. There's not much of it. I sized it to fit the page. And I chose a font that was a little bolder. There's a lot going on in the background and I wanted it to stand out. Now I'm going to cut the words apart and get rid of some of the white. And then play with the composition of where I want the words to go. My sentiment packs are available at NinnysNapkins.com. There is a link in the description box, and you can go to that site and you can scroll through and see exactly what quotes are involved or included with every sentiment pack. I'm gluing these down with gel medium as opposed to fluid medium because the owls in particular are thicker. There's a napkin, there's the gel medium that I glued it down with, as well as the copy paper. I like how the Mandela stencil grounds these owls. I've also only used 2 owls because love, 2. But you could have done a branch. You could have painted a branch in there and had them sitting on the branch. Other options are available. Now I've painted the one owl at the top of the mandala, and I'm going to walk you through the steps. Here I'm shading using the floating acrylic technique with black acrylic paint on the outside to make the owl stand out from the background. Now I'm going to paint the nose, the feathers on the chest of the owl, the feet. I'm going to just give it a coat of paint, the same color that it was, just to brighten it up a little bit. You could totally skip this step, but the focal image, you typically want it to be forward. Here I'm painting quinacridone magenta around the eyeballs. I'm using a liner brush. I thin the paint a little bit. That just helps it flow. I did the flower, the eyes, the feet, the nose, the feathers on the chest. I didn't do the background, the teal, because that was solid enough, I felt, but you could have. Grab my black Posca pen and I'm outlining the words. I consider the words part of the focal image, and you want them to stand out. And just adding a few details on the owls, making sure that everything's dry. And outlining the page with the Posca pen. There you have the finished page. I hope you love it as much as I do. I especially love the bright, cheery background, and we'll definitely use that color combo again. So this page was broken by smooshing with quinacridone magenta and bright yellow. I collaged shaped die cuts on there, those scallops that gave texture, pattern, and more white. I stenciled some patterns using colors that were already in the background. I edged the page with black. I also stenciled those dots with black. that added contrast. When you add black or white, you add contrast. And I chose to do the Mandela stencil in black again to build up that contrast and ground my napkin focal image owls. I doodled on the stenciling using my fine line applicator bottle. I painted over the focal image to make it brighter, and I shaded it. Both of those things make the focal image stand out. I added a sentiment to the page, outlined the page and the sentiment. Thank you so much for joining me. Now go get creative.